It's Friday, April 8th, 2016. I haven't made a video for a while, and today's video is going to be kind of a collection of a lot of different things. So, I'll start with the fact that here we are in April, in the second year of a really long presidential election campaign that has lasted far too long as far as I'm concerned, and I think there's probably a few people that agree with me about that. Some people refer to it as we're having a revolution. I heard somebody today say that people who support Senator Sanders and Donald Trump are part of groups that are actually in a rebellion mode. And I think that it's kind of a combination of the two, revolution and rebellion. People are feeling really disenfranchised, a lot of people. And I think it's exciting to see so many people engaged in the process. We should be engaged with contacting our senators and our representatives and our president, our local commissioners, and other people to tell them how we want things to be. Because it's supposed to be we the people, isn't it? At least that's how things are written. So I have watched Senator Sanders give his stump speech a few times. I don't have television, so I watch it online, and he's really connecting with the people. Donald Trump is connecting with the people. Hillary Clinton is connecting with the people with her message as well. They have different demographics, and it's interesting to see how those are across the board. As a woman who is Hillary's age, I can appreciate that people want her to have our first woman president, and she is well qualified. I thought she did a wonderful job as a first lady. I thought she was incredibly strong with some of the things she went through during that time. Our country it was an interesting 8 years when President Clinton was in the White House, and one of the things that I had shared in some of my videos earlier, because I do the Church Committee 3 series videos, was his committee that had studied the human experimentation, and he made a presentation along with Secretary O'Leary and a lady from Johns Hopkins of the report that committee, and there were quite a few people on the committee. They didn't all stand up at the presentation, but that's one of the things that I have become aware of in the last year because of my own situation. But the whole trade deals and dealing with the crime situation, and he inherited some things that he had to deal with, and some other problems came up while he was in office. It would be interesting to know the truth about Ms. Lewinsky and how she ended up being in the White House, because now that I know how things are done, how things are set up for people to try to cause problems, you wonder, what might have been going on there. But it was a very difficult time for the country. It was a difficult time for women who could relate to what she was going through. I had been through that with my first husband. I didn't darken my screen just then. It darkened on its own. Or it had help. There are gremlins that live in my computer. But that was a challenging time for her, and she handled it with a lot of dignity. So I can understand why Senator Sanders, Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton, Senator Cruz has his supporters. Our Ohio governor is still in the running. So it'll be interesting to see how things play out. Of course, the convention's going to be in Cleveland, which is at the other end of the state from where I am. So I won't be watching any of that in person, but it's going to be an interesting next few months for sure. Every day is interesting. One of the things that I find, I'll just say interesting again, I guess, is some of the questioning that's done of the various candidates, how the questions are asked, how they're framed. The whole qualified thing, I listened to the stump speech where he responded to qualified, and he kind of put it in a rhetorical framework, and the media people who were questioning him about it were kind of coming down on him like he had just gone extremely negative. And I thought his response, that he would respond to what was said to him, was appropriate. When somebody comes after you like that, you can, I guess, ignore it, or you can respond if it's framed in a way that's going to cost you votes. I mean, the whole thing is so there's a lot of scripting, and there's a lot of people involved in the background who have different ideas about how things should be handled. So, but the rebellion part, disenfranchised voters, people, and the long lines in Arizona, I mean, why is that acceptable? To make people stand in line for 5 hours to vote? This is the United States. Can't we do better than that? One of Senator Sanders' favorite sayings, one of the ones I like, is, I've been criticized for saying this, so let me say it again. And so I wanted to use that today because I'm going to talk about a lot of different things. But I want to say this again. I was tortured out of my home in Colorado by extreme sleep deprivation with the use of an unknown technology that was a silent sound, meaning only I could hear it, so it's silent to everybody else, like a siren beamed into my skull to keep me awake from 9 o'clock at night until approximately 6 in the morning. Plus, anytime I try to lay down during the day and rest, it would start up again. So it was the intent was sleep deprivation. Do not allow her to rest. And this started in April of 2010. I left my home in June of 2010. I tried to go back in the fall of 2010 for a few days to sort through some things. My then husband came to Ohio, and he was there to pick up the car I had driven out in June, and we went back in that car, and he ended up packing up some things and coming back with me, and he was here in Ohio for several months. And then he went back at the beginning of 2011, and we ended up divorcing. I went back in the fall in an attempt to do some things in the house for a week or two, and I could not stay there because the torture was so intense of the siren screaming into my skull. And if you never experienced anything like that, you have no idea what it can be. When people tell stories like this, it's always, well, it must be coming from inside your head. If you have voices in your head, you're schizophrenic, and it's all inside. Well, there's no sound of a siren that starts at 9 at night and goes till 6 in the morning. That's inside your skull somewhere. That's just not possible. And I've read and studied and learned a lot about all the technology that's out there that I didn't know about, that was being used on me silently. The ELF, extremely low frequencies, I believe started in 1993. So I'm using the Bernie Sanders, I've been mocked and criticized and made fun of, and women who tell the truth, they throw the Martha Mitchell effect at us. And when the suffragettes were trying to get the vote, Wilson wanted them put in jail, and one of the doctors stood up and said, women who stand up are often diagnosed as having mental illness problems, and that's not true. They're just being strong women. So for 6 years now, I've been on my own being a strong woman. But the sleep deprivation started in April 2010, continues to this day at various levels and frequencies. A man named Eric Fair has come forward. He was an interrogator over in the Middle East in some of the prisons, and he has come forward with, he's got a consequence, a memoir he's written that's just released recently. And I haven't read it yet, but I listened to one of his interviews on NPR the other day. It was very interesting. And then he also was interviewed on Democracy Now! And one of the things he said is that sleep deprivation is used as one of the reasons that it's used is to break people down so they have no hope, to eliminate hope from within their spirit. And of course, that's diagnosed as depression, and you're supposed to take pills for that, or it's diagnosed as a mental illness of some type, and you're supposed to take pills for that. So that's one of the reasons that sleep deprivation was used. Waterboarding's what's been talked about over and over again in the news, and the sleep deprivation has not been discussed nearly as much. But he talked about it, and I'm glad he did, and glad he came forward with that, because he was there, he saw it, he did it. He's not happy about some of the things that he did. He understands the different viewpoints on this. I've experienced sleep deprivation, and it's torture. If you don't want to use the word torture, you can call it extreme abuse. Obviously, I'm not being interrogated, so we can't call it enhanced interrogation. And finding out more about my situation, I did send a request to the lady from Johns Hopkins. I sent it priority mail, and I never heard anything back asking more if she knew about the non-consenting experimentation because of my father's work for the Department of Energy. I have not filed FOIA requests. I need to do that. I also need to send for information from the different people in the medical fields, because I believe that people came in and talked to the doctors, whether it's the doctor, surgeon, eye doctor, dentist, chiropractor, other healing types of alternative healing types of things. I think somebody was always there explaining that I was a human experimentation subject, but of course nobody ever talked with me about it. So there's really been a breach of ethics, client, and not when you talk to a lawyer, it's client-lawyer privilege. With a doctor, it should be doctor-patient privilege, one would think, but that doesn't seem to be what's happening in the United States today. So I have not done that. Part of the reason is that I don't have printer access. I did order a printer, and it's been a while now. And when I got the printer, it was programmed somehow so that it wouldn't go past the setup. I couldn't get it to go past setup so that I could do what I needed to do to then connect it to my computer and have it work. And I don't have a technology person to assist me. Let's see. After I left Colorado in June of 2010, later that summer, within several weeks after I got there, so in July approximately 2010, I had a blister that when this torture started in Colorado, I had a blister that developed on one of my toes, and I dug into it with a needle. When I finally got to Ohio, I was treating it with some meds I had and putting Band-Aids on it and, popping it and getting the liquid out. And because I had too much to deal with, a blister wasn't my big concern. And it was tolerable as long as I kept it Band-Aided. And I finally decided I was going to get rid of it for good. So I popped it and got the liquid out. And once I did that and it started to dry up, I could see how scabby it was there in the middle of it. And I thought, well, maybe there's something in there. Maybe I stepped on a sticker or something that got up in there to cause this blistering, because it was a pretty good-sized blister. And once I dug into it with the needle, and it took several days because it hurt, I got a little white chip out of there. And I believe that little white chip was accessed when all of this torture started. I think that's why the blister appeared, because it was connected to the frequencies, the whatever was coming in. From what I've read, it may be satellite, may be coming from satellites. I'll talk something about something else too, in a few minutes. So I dug that out, and I got that blister treated, and the toe started to heal up, and then my big toe started to blister. And I have shared this on my Facebook page and written about it, but I haven't shared it on one of the videos yet. So let's see if I can get this on here in a way that you can see it. At the bottom of this bag, and it's hard to see, there's a little thing right there. There it is. Up against my dark shirt, you can see it. It's about half-inch long. It's really weird looking, and that's what was in my big toe. And I believe that was connected in some way, maybe to the chip, because they were in the same foot. So that strange object and that little teeny chip are part of the story that goes along with when the torture started, because they got blisters where both of those were, and that's how I found them. And I was able to dig them out. Again, I did surgery with a needle, and it took several days to get the one out of my big toe, and it was even more difficult to get because it was on the inside of the toe, and so I had to twist my foot around in order to do it. And it was bigger, so I had to rip open a bigger area to get it out, since I was just using a needle. I've done surgery with a needle on other things on my body that didn't belong. A little white place under my eye that was there for several years. I had a doctor cut a wart and another weird thing off the back of my leg that was almost seemed like it was plastic. I've had weird stuff come out of my navel. I showed that on one of the videos. It was a little wire thing and then two little fan-shaped things that were not normal physiological, normal human physiological items. And there's all the stories online about the non-biological stuff that's being put into the air, and that's a whole nother conversation. So I wanted to show the item from my big toe today. Once I got to Ohio, while I was while my former husband was still here, I was pressured into getting an MRI, which I got in Maysville, Kentucky, and then trying to get the records of that later, after a lawyer had told me I was entitled to them, because the doctor that I had gone to that ordered the MRI was in Ripley, Ohio, and I went across the river to Maysville because that's a large health complex, and I was never shown any of the records. I didn't get any kind of written thing. I just went in and she said that it showed that it was a couple of things, a little bit of deterioration here supposedly, so I tried to get that record and had a challenge there. So I'm going to have to work on that some more. Okay. Human rights violations. non-consenting human experimentation. There's been apologies for various ones that have gone on over the years, and we're talking about use of disenfranchised people, like people in prisons, people in mental hospitals, orphans, people who sometimes veterans who have problems and end up in hospitals or care facilities, and they might not know that they're being experimented on. I think there was some of that probably, but it was more prisoners and mental institution people and orphans, because they were easy to get. Human rights violations and extreme abuse of ethics, the lack of empathy and care for other human beings. That's my computer going to its timeout mode. I have to move my mouse around, and I think that'll keep from happening. I forget to do that. All right. The program that I've been subjected to that goes along with the human experimentation is what I call the industry of personal destruction. That's my name for it. And the keywords are deny, deceive, disrupt, degrade, and inevitably destroy a U.S. person. Now, this program of personal destruction is happening elsewhere in the world. It's happening, the human experimentation is happening to other people as well. And one of the things I just read recently, which might be a possibility, and there's so much disinformation, which are lies, misinformation, half-truths, misdirection online, that is aimed at me and is aimed at people using computers in general, that you don't always know. But one of the things that was suggested, which I think is a possibility, is that, and I lost my train of thought when I was explaining that. I'll come back. One of the things that was suggested is that there's so many people that are training to take care of the rest of us when there's big emergencies, threats of terrorism, a 911 multiplied by lots more people, things like that they talk about, possibilities, which hopefully a lot more people are aware and monitoring stuff like that so that doesn't happen. That all these people are being trained then can be deployed as teams against sample people like me to test their different strategies and things that they're doing. And that makes sense. That could be happening. That we've got to have real-time drills. And so they're doing, you've got this human experimentation pool of people, and we'll just add the team, a drill team, Homeland Security drill force, to work on them so we can practice and be ready for whatever when we need it for everybody else. So if that's what's happening, it's really cruel as well, isn't it? I'm going to include in the notes below this video, I'm going to include links that I have shared before. One is a link to John Glenn's 1997 attempt to protect non-consenting human experimentation subjects. Dennis Kucinich in 2001 tried to implement a treaty-based ban on space-based weapons being tested and used on people here and around the world. I assume the legislation was specifically for our country, but it would have broad implications because it could be modified and used in other countries as well. I'll share the link to Eric Fair, the gentleman who was the interrogator. I'll share the link to his NPR interview. And I will just make a note that you can find the Democracy Now! Interview. He just did that in the last couple days. So you can search for the Democracy Now! Link, and they have a lot of good interviews with people that are sharing information, that have talked to a lot of whistleblowers. He's an author who's promoting his book as well as talking about what he observed and what he did. I don't know if he puts the term whistleblower on himself or not, but he's a truth teller at this point for sure. Another link that I'll share, electromagnetic frequency mind control weapons. It's an interview Jeff Rense did with Dr. Patrick Flanagan. Dr. Flanagan developed the neurophone, and the patent number is given in the links below on that video. And the neurophone was sold to the U.S. and then it kind of disappeared. So chances are good it went into the black ops programs, into the deeply classified section. And also they had a discussion about the Lilly effect. And this is the other thing that I mentioned earlier that I would talk about. The Lilly effect. I'm not a scientist. I'm more into I loved biology in college because I like plants and animals and nature and all of that. But physics and chemistry and those things are not my expertise. I don't know that much about them. But the Lilly effect is waves, electronic waves that work across the electrical current that comes into our houses. And so they go into conversation about that, and there's some diagrams and explanation that are interesting, and I need to go back and watch that again. And as I said, there's lots of info in the box below that video with links to more information. So that's helpful. A couple of books I wanted to recommend today. If you have not read this one, and whether you're a believer and a supporter of Anonymous or not, there's sure a lot of good information in here about what they are and how they came to be. I saw Gabriella Coleman, saw a couple of her interviews, and so I got the book, and I'm halfway through reading it. It's Hacker, Hoaxer, Whistleblower, Spy, and it gives a lot of history about how they started, how they came to be. So she knows some of the people in the Anonymous group personally. She's met with them. Some of them have turned on their fellow Anons. Some of them get disillusioned and leave the group for whatever reason. And they're extremely active online. And sorry, pardon my dogs. When they see things outside, they start barking, and they also sometimes they bark because of what I'm talking about. So I recommend that book to anybody who'd like to know more about what Anonymous really is. And just like some of the people that are on online, who friend you, are actually people that you probably would want to be friends with in real life. And then there are other people who are they're paid to be online and disrupt. They're paid to be part of the Deceive, Disrupt, and Degrade group. So I don't know how many people are in Anonymous. I don't know. I think one of my former students revealed herself a year or so ago. There was a picture that looked a lot like a gal that was a former student. And it said, see, she said her first name, and she said, see, we're everywhere. And I thought, well, if you're anonymous and you're everywhere, I hope that you're one of the people that's working on the side of the good guys. The other book that I enjoyed so much, because I come from a farming family. My mom's family were farmers, and two of her brothers are still farmers with some of their children. This is called The Lentil Underground. It's by a lady named Liz Carlisle. Lentil Underground, Renegade Farmers, and the Future of Food in America. And one of the reviewers said, who'd have thought that a book about lentil farming would be a page-turner? With a voice as clear and powerful on the page as it is on stage, Liz Carlisle writes the struggles of Montana's farmers as an epic. Their battles with food, finance, healthcare, and modern capitalism are both inspiring and a timely reminder that populism needn't be a dirty word. And I thought that was a really nice summary of this book. Senator Tester in Montana is involved with this, and she worked in his office. I don't know if she was an intern or if she was actually employed there, but she is the person who wrote this book, and it is. It was an easy book to read, and maybe it's more interesting to me because I'm a country girl who knows people who are farmers, but this is a whole different take on farming. And one of the things I found interesting is how scientific they were in what they were doing. And they were very organized in their planning and how they did things, and they would try something one year and they had it all figured out as to what worked and what didn't and what they would change the next year. And somebody would come and train with one person and go and try something else. But they're getting a bunch of interesting crops that are way beyond the basics that we think of as what we should be growing in this country. And lentil soup is one of the best things that I like as a soup. I really think lentil soup is good stuff, and it's good for you. And they experiment with a lot of other grains as well. So if you'd like to read a book about what can be done with our food supply, I suggest that one. This is my mother's Bible, and after she was in period of her life where she wasn't reading much anymore, I brought it home with me, and I found that she had highlighted various scripture in the Bible. And one of the ones that really I have gone back to over and over again is John 3:16-21. And of course, John 3:16 is the one that everybody knows and is used all the time. For God so loved the world that he gave his only son. But if you go on down to 19 and 20, this is the verdict. Light has come into the world, but men loved darkness instead of light because their deeds were evil. Now, if beaming a screaming siren sound into someone's skull isn't evil, I don't know what is. If keeping people from sleeping isn't evil, I don't know what is. If putting people in stress positions that cause them extreme pain isn't evil, I don't know what is. If blowing up children and calling them collateral damage isn't evil, I don't know what is. So, everyone who does evil hates the light and will not come into the light for fear that his deeds will be exposed. And we call that classified for national security reasons, I guess. But whoever lives by the truth, the people who tell the truth, comes into the light so that it may be plainly seen that what he has been done through God. And you don't have to call the Creator God. Some people say, yes, you do. It's God. It's in the Bible. Well, the Bible was written by men. And we have all these religions around the world that have all these different holy books. This is only one holy book. And is it the right holy book? I don't think that well, anyway, we could debate that all day. But the Native people say Creator, Great Spirit, because it's the Creator. Somebody created all of this. There's some force of nature, obviously larger than we are, and there's a lot of light involved with that creation. And so the light of truth shining on what's been done, what's being done, changes things. And we are in a time of change. And do we want to be on the time of change that is good change? Do we want to honor the people who live with us and around us and across the ocean, and what do we want? How do we want to be in the world? So I wanted to share that with you because I think that verses 19 through 21 are just as important as John 3:16. And she had those highlighted. So it's like a message from her. The other message I've gotten from her, the last 2 years, my mother passed in 2013, the summer. And in 2014, a morning glory plant appeared out in my planter out here that I had not seeded. She loved morning glories. She liked them a lot. And I have a morning glory story of where I think she was being harassed, but I'm not going to go into that now. And so that morning glory appeared, and I enjoyed it, and I took pictures of it. And then last year, and I pulled it out, when it dried up, and threw it in the woods and figured that that was the last of it. And the last year it came back. And not only did it come back, it was like 6 or 7 times larger than what the original plant had been, and with 10 times the blooms on it. And this started sometime in September, I believe, and went through maybe August or September. It was that time of the year when it showed up. And I was actually surprised because, that late in the summer season, I didn't expect to have any more blooming plants starting. And it just bloomed, and every morning I'd go out there and it would be blooming. And, morning glory, that's when it's at its best. So she left that in the Bible, and of course I found it before she passed, and then the morning glory came in the last 2 years. The sign on the back of my car these days says, "Thanks to those who help, not hurt. Thanks to those who create, not destroy." And then it has the mindjustice.org website. Thanks to the whistleblowers and truth tellers who are shining the light, because that's what we need. And that's one of the things that, again, the Sanders campaign and the Trump campaign have talked about things. They have different approaches. They have different ways of doing things. You can agree or disagree. The whole female thing with Megyn Kelly wasn't very comfortable as a woman to watch. I thought she handled herself really well. We can keep telling the truth. We can keep asking questions. We can keep looking for answers. We can keep trying to sort through the lies and the misinformation and the misdirection. We can ask that those who know about what's being done to cause people harm. It's been 6 years, April 2010, April 2016, to step forward, get out of black ops, and tell the truth. The last thing I wanted to do today is, again, give a shout out to my Indigenous brothers and sisters and thank them for being the wise people that they are, who've shared so much, who've endured so much, who've survived so much, because they are. I watched a short video of several of them. They were out in nature somewhere doing their hoop dancing, and with some of the one of the groups that does great alternative native music. So I watched them, and I was looking for the I've heard the prophecies about how the different races will be reunited. And actually there was a meeting in 1991 where the elders said that we were entering a healing time, and that it was a coming together time. So that was 91. So that's about 25 years ago at this point. And perhaps that's what the Revolution Rebellion part is about as well. The different indigenous populations, including our native people here in our country, use the colors. The white race, one of the Lakota, They use the circle with different colors in it, and they have other shapes. They have some four-sided shapes with the colors in them. One has white in the north, and that represents fire spirit. Another has yellow in the east, that represents the wind, air, which is the mind. Red is the south, which is water, emotions, and black is the west, which is the earth and the body, and harvest. And this comes from Black Elk. That was his teaching about that. And then another group says the red is east, the yellow is south, the black is west, and the white is north, which is a change from Black Elk's, because Black Elk had yellow east and this one has yellow south. So there's different interpretations of that, and that nothing's set in stone. Well, some things are. They carve sayings about justice on the stones of the courthouses, because they have that on our courthouse here. And two of the sides I've read. I need to, every time I drive by the I've read the river is to the south, so I've read the north and the east. I need to read the west and the south and write those down as well. But the indigenous people are so tied in to the plants and the animals and the elements, the fire and the wind and the water, and Mother Earth herself and Father Sky, and they have the wisdom. They know this stuff, and honoring them. That's one of the things I read today, is that that we all have, that we're coming back inside our skin, our bodies, inside the red body or the yellow body or the black brown body or the white body. But we all have, there's many of us that have this tie to nature. And Chief Warren Lyons said that, there is no mercy in nature, there's only law. And you obey the law or you suffer the consequences. And that's what we're seeing now, is we're suffering the consequences of not honoring, obeying the law. Obeying, that's not my favorite word, because the kind of stuff that's been done to me is try to get me to conform. Sleep deprivation, break the will of the person and make them lose hope. But it's not obey the law, but honor the law and follow the law. Trees are important, birds are important, grass is important, soil is important, clean air is important, clean water is important. Living beings are important. Thanks to the men who support women and other men and children and animals and the earth and the planet. Thanks to the women who support other women and children and animals and the planet. We're all here together. Are you hurting or helping? Are you creating or destroying? Creators and helpers. Thank you.